are going to be seeing is 5 guys playing the traditional instruments of bluegrass who aren't a band. They get together regularly to jam. And you have to know that they're 5 of the very, very best players in the Hudson Valley. So we're really lucky. I'm excited. Hope you guys are too. And I want to introduce you to Andy Bing now. Andy?
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you very much to the Harding Club of Poughkeepsie and all of you for inviting us, and to Rich for helping to set this up. We really appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this evening. My name is Andy Bing, and I'm joined by Lynn Lipton, who just spoke, and by 5 of the most accomplished bluegrass musicians in the Hudson Valley who are gathered at Lynn's house, who will be providing the musical demonstrations of bluegrass music tonight. And I would like to tell you in advance that most of the program will be music, will be their performance. These musicians include David Chernak on fiddle, John Imagian on guitar, Bruno Brzezzi on banjo, and maybe if we're lucky, also fiddle, Frank Cara on mandolin, and Eric Marshall on bass fiddle. So this is the standard bluegrass band lineup. These folks will each briefly say a few words about their instruments in a moment. And the band will play several tunes and instrumentals that will illustrate how the instruments and how the vocals all fit together to make bluegrass music. I just have a few words about the origins of bluegrass music and what it is. Bluegrass is a distinct form of American roots music. It's played on acoustic instruments, and it derives largely from the musical style that was developed by a Kentuckian named Bill Monroe and his band, the Bluegrass Boys, starting in the mid-1940s. Monroe built his sound on a foundation of traditional music, which included old-time Southern fiddle music, a lot of blues, some jazz, and some things that Bill Monroe added himself. The distinctive sound that I think most people associate with bluegrass is the sound of the 5-string banjo. Bill did not play the banjo. Bill was a mandolin player. The banjo player who really brought bluegrass into its own was a man named Earl Scruggs, who joined the Bluegrass Boys in 1945. And that band also included a guitar player named Lester Flatt, who was Bill's lead singer and who did a lot of the singing with Monroe, as well as some other accomplished musicians who kind of set the pattern for bluegrass. They played mandolin, banjo, guitar, fiddle, and bass fiddle, which is the lineup that you see at Lynn's house. And that group was the band that really kind of set bluegrass out there in the country music world and on the Grand Ole Opry and in live performances, and helped excite a lot of interest in that kind of music, and helped the music, inspired a lot of other people to start playing it, and eventually became sort of a subgenre of country music and perhaps folk music, and eventually its own sort of genre of music. With that brief introduction, I thought that it might be nice to have the band play a tune that Bill Monroe recorded called Love, Please Come Home.
As you read this letter that I write to you,
Thank you very much. Just a couple of pointers about what you just saw and heard. Um, First of all, you notice that the song was sung by David, singing the melody on the verses, and then on the choruses, he was joined by Frank, who was singing a high part that harmonized with David's lead vocal part. Harmony vocals are a huge part of bluegrass music. The other thing that perhaps you noticed was that in between the choruses, instrumentalists, and at the beginning of the song, there was a banjo solo to kick off the song, and then in between the choruses, there was a mandolin break by Frank and then a fiddle break by David, which were sort of a individual solo expression of the melody of the tune on the mandolin and on the fiddle. This is a typical bluegrass song arrangement, and it gives each of the instrumentalists and the singers a chance to shine in the spotlight while being part of an ensemble. Most bluegrass tunes or numbers are vocals. Singing songs are the hugely dominant type of bluegrass music. Everybody likes a fast instrumental, and we've got a couple of those too. But I thought that the next tune to illustrate, again, it's a Bill Monroe tune to illustrate the importance of vocals, is a vocal trio, which will feature three voices, a tune by Bill Monroe called Sitting Alone in the Moonlight.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Sitting alone in the moonlight, thinking of the days gone by, wondering about my darling. I can still hear her saying goodbye. Oh, the moon grows red and the little stars seem to whisper and say, your sweetheart has found another, and he is far, far away. Sitting alone in the moonlight, thinking of the days gone by, wondering about my darling. I can still hear her say goodbye. Oh, the moon grows pale as I sit here. Each little star seems to whisper and say, your sweetheart has found another, and now she is far, far away.
That was terrific. That was a beautiful vocal trio, which really illustrates again how the harmonies are usually arranged in a bluegrass trio with the melody in the middle and a part below and a part above. That was really lovely. And that was a great ending, boys. Really did a nice job on that. By the late 1940s, there were a number of other bands that were playing in the style of Monroe. And as I said, it was starting to become a genre of music rather than just Bill Monroe music. And perhaps the most successful of all the bluegrass bands ever was a band that Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs formed when they broke away from Bill Monroe's band in 1948. Lester Flatt, Earl Scruggs, and the Foggy Mountain Boys. Scruggs had that exciting banjo style, and that was really what I think, if anything, did really catapulted bluegrass into the musical stratosphere. Uh, Earl played fast and clean, and everybody wanted to play the banjo like Earl. Um, Perhaps the most famous banjo instrumental of all time was written by Earl Scruggs and recorded by the band Earl Scruggs with the Flatt and Scruggs band in 1949. And that tune is called Foggy Mountain Breakdown. That was terrific. That was Bruno Bruzzese on the banjo there, and beautiful rendition of Foggy Mountain Breakdown. I think Rich had mentioned that perhaps people should talk a little bit about their instruments, and now might be a good time to just take a moment and have each of the five of you talk a little bit about the instruments that you're playing, just a couple of sentences, and to let people know a little bit more about them. People may not be all that familiar with all of the instruments up there anyway.
So banjo, the 5-string banjo. The 5th string, you can see this little peg up here, halfway up the neck. It's shorter, make it easier for it to play higher. And it kind of syncopates into that whole asymmetrical sound that you get from the banjo. And it's got this nice wooden resonator on the back to make it big and loud, because that's what we banjo players like. So that's it.
So this is the fiddle, arguably the most important instrument in bluegrass music, and perhaps of all time. Well, we've yet to see. So a lot of people always ask me, what's the difference between a fiddle and a violin? Like physically, structurally, there's no real difference. You can tweak little things here, but if you're playing classical music on it, it's a violin. If you're playing country or bluegrass or whatever, or swing or whatever, it's a fiddle. It's instead of being played with picks like the rest of the instrument, it has a bow, which is made of wood and horsehair, and it's got 4 strings, and it's really neat. It's great, and it has, even though it has 4 strings, just like the mandolin, or actually, it has 4 strings, but it's tuned the same as the mandolin. I'll let Frank explain that on the mandolin.
So the mandolin, like the violin, is a classically based instrument. It's a lute family instrument. In the old days, it had a bowl back on it. Orville Gibson decided that he would build a mandolin that was more similar to a violin with a carved top and a carved back to make it louder. And it is louder. That's what we mandolin players like.
Despite what you may have heard, the guitar is the most important instrument in the bluegrass band. The guitar has been part of bluegrass. Is my head cut off? What is that?
Yeah.
Guitar has been part of bluegrass since the inception back in the 40s, like Andy said. And it predominantly was a rhythm instrument. It was the rhythmic drive of the bluegrass band, and really known for only playing chords behind the singers and the melody players. The most important thing a bluegrass guitar does is that, which you may have heard. That's called the G run, which Lester Flatt invented. In the 1960s, the guitar started to be a more melodic instrument. Players like Doc Watson and Clarence White started playing single melody lines and copying fiddle tunes. And then the guitar has just taken off from then. And this is a 6-string Martin D28. Thank you.
Eric?
All right, the bass is inarguably the most important instrument in the band or in any setting. It plays half as many notes, but they're twice as important. The bass is exactly, just as with the violin, it's the same instrument you would find in a classical orchestra. It's a member of the violin family. It's the largest and therefore the deepest, lowest sounding instrument of the violin family. One of the biggest distinctions between the instrument as it's played in the orchestra and in bluegrass setting is that almost never do you use a bow. It's essentially not appropriate to bluegrass. You play what in classical world would be called pizzicato. And that's already more notes than you would hear in an average song. The main job is to just keep a foundational rhythm and harmonic structure. So just sort of a basic pulse, almost like a polka or marching pulse. And it is the prerogative of the bassist not to ever have to take a solo.
All right, I've got one too up here, although unfortunately I'm not able to be with the rest of the band, but there was a 6th instrument that wasn't ever in Bill Monroe's band, and Bill didn't really think much of it, but Flatt and Scruggs in the mid-1950s hired a fellow named Josh Graves to play the Dobro, which is kind of a souped-up Hawaiian guitar, and I happen to have one with me. It's nice and shiny and big, and the strings are actually way up off the neck, and it's played with a slide in the left hand rather than trying to fret like this. The strings are way too high to be able to fret it. And it gives a nice kind of Hawaiian sort of slidey sound to the notes. And I'm going to do a solo demonstrating that in a minute, or a few minutes. But as I said, that's the 6th instrument really in a typical bluegrass combo, and a lot of bands do not have them. Before we leave the subject of the instruments, I'll just say that Bill Monroe himself, for his point of view, was that the fiddle was the king instrument in bluegrass band. So Bill Monroe is on David's side in this friendly little dispute. Fiddle tunes are a huge part of.
We're going to switch out Cherokee Shuffle for a Bill Monroe fiddle tune, like Big Mud.
Okay. Well, that's good. I was just about to get to that. Fiddle tunes are a huge part of bluegrass music. As I said earlier, a lot of Bill Monroe's fiddle bluegrass style originated out of old-time Southern string band and fiddle music. This is a tune that Bill Monroe and his band wrote, and it's going to feature the twin fiddles of David and Bruno. It's called Big Mun. That was terrific. That was fiddles played in harmony, which is usually referred to in bluegrass as twin fiddles, and sometimes Bill Monroe would even have triple fiddles. He'd have three fiddles harmonizing on a tune, but that was just lovely. Two fiddles expertly played in harmony on a Bill Monroe composition that really has a flavor of a lot of Monroe's music. It's modal and just a fast, really exciting piece of music to listen to. I mentioned that Flatt and Scruggs were one of the bands that began to sort of play in the style of Bill Monroe. Another group was two brothers from Virginia, the Stanley brothers, who continued sort of an old-timey music tradition of having brother duet harmony singing. And we've picked out a Stanley Brothers tune to illustrate their style of music. The tune is called Think of What You've Done.
I gotta do what banjo players do. Tune. No one believes it when they hear the banjo, but we do.
Banjos are notoriously finicky and challenging to tune, but Bruno is a master at tuning the banjo. Thank you. That was terrific. I am going to, at this point, demonstrate the Dobro with a Dobro Solo, which unfortunately the band can't join me because it's not possible to play simultaneously over Zoom. There's always a little bit of a delay. And I'm not sure how many of them are familiar with this number anyway. It's an old Western swing fiddle tune that Josh Graves, the Flatt and Scruggs Dobro player, recorded with the Flatt and Scruggs band His adaptation of it is a Dobro tune. It's called the Spanish two-step. Excuse me for a moment. Try and see if I can get the camera focused on the on me and on the instrument. So this is how I fret the dobro with a steel bar that slides up and down the string. So this tune is, as I said, called the Spanish two-step. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So by the 1960s, bluegrass was breaking out into popular culture thanks to primarily Flatt and Scruggs. They were hired to play the theme music and a lot of the soundtrack for a TV sitcom called The Beverly Hillbillies, which was extremely popular in the 1960s and I guess probably on reruns to this day. Flatt and Scruggs' recording of Foggy Mountain Breakdown was also selected by Warren Beatty as soundtrack music for the movie Bonnie and Clyde in the late 60s. He wanted fast banjo tunes to sort of supercharge the chase and getaway scenes in the movie. And that brought Foggy Mountain Breakdown to the attention of a lot of people who had never heard it before and made it quite popular. In the 1970s, a banjo instrumental named Dueling Banjos was used in the soundtrack of the movie Deliverance, and that also became a big hit. So folk revival music and movie soundtracks and TV shows helped put bluegrass out there in an audience that was a lot larger than just perhaps fans of old time country music, which were where the music started. And the folk revival did a lot for bluegrass, and it also sort of brought a lot of repertoire into bluegrass that perhaps hadn't been there before. One of those tunes is an old blues number from or about a neighborhood in Dallas, Texas called the Deep Ellum Blues. And John is going to sing that. So bluegrass music is, I think, really in recent years, recent decades, certainly has become, has really sort of taken off among younger people, and the presence of a lot of really talented musicians, younger musicians, they're have really energized the music and helped push the boundaries in a whole bunch of different directions at once. Um, there are now college music programs that are designed to train bluegrass musicians. There's one at the Berklee College of Music. There's college programs in Tennessee and Texas that train bluegrass musicians, so that young people are coming out with really terrific skill sets technically, and applying bluegrass techniques and instruments to a whole variety of music. That I think is really important for bluegrass music if it's to survive and thrive as we get deeper into the 21st century. It's past its 75th birthday now, and it's good to keep younger people interested in it who want to carry it on. And they're also, you know, people, in addition to the people pushing the boundaries, there's a lot of younger bands out there that are playing the music Bill Monroe played. And one of the songs that they're still playing that Monroe wrote more than 50 years ago is a really kind of spooky bluegrass number called The Walls of Time. And I'd like to kind of wrap it up with having the band do that song.
Bill wrote this with a young hippie by the name of Peter Rowan, actually.
And that young hippie is now what, 75?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ready?
Thank you. Another beautiful vocal trio on top of all the everything else in there. It was really, really nice. And that concludes our program for this evening. I thank you all very much for having us here. It's been a pleasure to do this. I think bluegrass musicians love nothing more than trying to spread the word about the music that we love. And we are very grateful to you for inviting us, and to Rich and to Lynn for organizing this and setting it up, and to Lynn and Steve.